Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Sell Me This Pro. I am in a hotel room in Stockholm. I'm starting to think, B-Dog, that my setups in hotel rooms, which are very budget and weird, are actually better than what I used to be in. Someone told me the lighting is better. Someone else said that they prefer the ambiance of the sad mood lighting of hotels. So maybe I need to rethink that now that I've moved house. What do you think?
I think the wallpaper's kind of cool. Like, you got these little crustaceans just floating, just in the void by your bed when you
Kind of
sleep,
like, oh
which
yeah,
is
I
nice.
just realized there's like these weird like lobster
Lobsters,
things.
yeah,
And then you mentioned this earlier, the ladder.
yeah,
I've got these two single beds because in Sweden we can't do a double bed. They've always got to
no.
do the two single beds with one mattress over it. And then I've got bunk beds. They actually fold down into bunk beds. That's what the ladder's there for. So I'm presuming this is a family room, but it's just me. I might take the bunk beds down for a giggle tonight by myself because I have no friends.
Just in case you want to mix it up one night, you can just go on the ladder and just have a good time.
Hold on, I'm here. I mean, oh, this is gonna go. So so I'm here for 5 nights, and there's 4 beds. So there's 2 single beds
Oh,
and 2
easy
bunk
then.
beds,
You
and then
just
a
sleep on the
chair.
floor for the other night.
So
Yes.
yeah, there we go. So every night we're gonna move around. Okay, let's get into the seriousness of what this show is all about. We talk about the players sitting in tier 2 that you might know about. Maybe you don't know about them. And B-Dog tells you whether we love them or hate them or what we're thinking about them. And a couple of times we get it right. Sometimes we get it wrong, and we will actually recap at some point and do
Yeah.
like a recap of where we guess, maybe after the RMRs. But oh, I have a great idea, B-Dog.
Okay.
We should do the recap together in the same place. We'll talk about that offline, but there
Okay,
we go.
sure.
Like, there's a little teaser. I just figured this out. We could actually do that. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, we
I'm
could
very
actually.
concerned about who
That
you
time could
suggest.
work well. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
You've just worked it out.
Yeah, I've just
Yes, it
worked it out.
could.
Yeah. Okay.
I probably have to figure out a microphone situation, but it might force me to spend some money on cool shit. So we'll
Hopefully
get that right. But
hopefully we're in the same hotel, right? You stay there, and then I'll just be on like the other angle, just on the top of the bunk bed. Just
there we go. You can sit on the top of the bunk bed, but you need to bring an A-Stone headset with a mic because I don't have those cool little, those like really cool Rode mics that people have. They're like,
yes,
you can get the 2 separate ones and they clip them on.
Lucy's got
So
some.
I really wanted the DJ. So maybe we can borrow. I have desperately wanted a set of those. I actually wanted the DJI ones. But every time I look at them, I'm like, these are too expensive and you'll never use them. But now I'm like, maybe there should be an investment for Sell Me This Pro because we might actually use them one time.
One time.
They're actually I think they're on my wish list on Amazon. All right, I will think about that. Let's talk about the player that you're going to be focusing on today, because I think there's going to be a lot of people who are confused as to why you want to highlight this player. I will ask those questions later, but let's get straight into who exactly do you want to be talking about today.
I want to talk about one of the prides in the UK scene at the moment, because look, the UK scene has been flourishing over the last couple of years. And I'll be honest, I'll put a disclaimer in. I'm actually quite nervous to record this episode because my history lessons on the UK scene, they are okay. I'm worried I'm going to get a couple of bits wrong. And I just want to put this disclaimer out there. Guys, if you're watching from the UK scene and I do get anything wrong, I'm sorry. I'll be better. But this is kind of who I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to talk about Gizmy, who's currently playing on Monte Gen, the academy team for the Monte esports roster. He had a little bit of a trial standing in with the guys for about 3 months earlier in the year. Has come out of the UK scene in a time where we've got Mezzy, in a time where we've got Smuya as well returning to ITB. We've also got Gizmy, who's doing incredible work. And when we get good players in the UK scene, I want to yap about them.
Fair enough, but I mean, so for the non-UK folks, so I have a British passport, but spoiler, I know nothing about UK Counter-Strike. For the non-UK folk though, they might be sitting there. So you're saying I want to yap about him, and don't get me wrong, like good on him. He's in Monte Gen, but he didn't have a good run in the main roster. I mean, even he admitted that. So you're hyping him up, but it wasn't a great 3 months, was it?
No, it wasn't, but I feel like you got to add in the context of what was happening with that Monte roster, where there was an awful lot of change. They weren't sure what the direction that entire roster was going to go in. And you go ahead and you bring up two players that you feel like will fit your blueprint to kind of get you by some of these events. And it's quite clear that it was Ryu and it was Gizmy that got promoted to that team just for a brief period. I think they did well at Pro League. I think Gizmy had a good showing Pro League. Every event that Gizmy's been at, I think he's played well, even if the stats maybe don't reflect that. Like I covered a lot of his games when he was sort of at these events, and I was very impressed with his development. He's also just a young guy as well, and obviously we speak about these guys, and everyone the common counter will be, well, Donk's really young and he's insane, but I feel like when you are sort of kind of going through that cycle of coming out of the UK scene, you're then going into your first like main international project that is competing and playing HOTV officials regularly. To then get the call up into the main team. At the time, Monte was doing pretty well as well. There's always going to be that expectation on you, and I feel like he did his job, and I feel like he performed to a decent ability. But it's clear the timings just weren't quite there, and the direction the team wanted to go in wasn't quite there. We now know that Monte's a Polish team now, which I don't think anyone would have seen coming. So um, I think it's unfair to maybe paint him with the brush of, well, we had these events and he wasn't very good, but you got to add in a lot of context as well, and I do that a lot on these episodes. But I think it's especially fair to Gizmy to add in a bit of context there and say, well, sure, he's a player that's undergone a lot of role changes. He's undergone a lot of just different sort of setups and just even projects in the UK scene to start with, and now over here in Monte Gen, this is his like first proper international team that is playing officials regularly. To go from that to then go immediately, okay, you're going to Pro League, okay, you're going to go to Chengdu, which I couldn't even go to in the end. Like it's a massive step up compared to where you were.
For sure. And I think, I mean, I was obviously being a little bit of a hard ass there, but I wanted to ask the things that I think people would say. I think the fact that he went back down to Monty's academy team and he himself has said, it didn't work out, timing wasn't right, but it wasn't like he left the organization completely. So for him, he obviously sees benefits in where he is, and he was, I'm presuming, grateful for the experience, but probably a little bit of self-reflection as well. Went, okay, this is not the right space right now. But it's obviously an organization he's happy with because he's stayed in that academy team.
Yeah, I'd say so, and I think it's one of those where it's really good for their development, and all of Monte Gen have been performing a lot better in the last sort of 3 months. And this team has made playoffs of CCTs. They always are a mainstay, just sort of in the group stage pushing for playoffs. I think they made a semi-final run as well at some point. Like, they've been playing some very good Counter-Strike, and I've been very impressed with what they've been doing, just sort of in the space, considering that you look at the players and it's like, okay, some of these guys I'm not too familiar with. Some of them I've got a little bit more experience with, like Shield, for example, who AWPs in this team, was in-game leading in this team. We'll come back to this later, but he was in-game leading in the team, and then now he's just focusing more on his AWPing. You've got players in here like FNL, who is an incredibly aggressive player that you need to just sort of tame back a little bit, and you've got Ryu, who again, when he was playing in Monte for the main team, was overextending, was being really aggressive. But suddenly, you've now seen all these guys now mesh together and buy into the same sort of brand of Counter Strike that they've been playing. I think a massive element of that will be Avan, the coach, as well. But they're playing some very solid fundamental CS. They're moving in the right direction, and they're also just playing an awful lot of games, which is so important, especially for these academy teams in tier 2, in tier 3, to cast a spotlight on you, but also you can see that development. Like, you go back and you watch Monte Gen like 4 months ago, you go back to watch them like last week, it's night and day. And it's fantastic just how much improvement this team has gone through in such a short space of time. And Gizmy's on that team, so I want to talk about Gizmy.
Do you think that improvement also came from the fact that two of the team had a chance to kind of play at an EPL, had a chance to play with like that strong, quote unquote, stronger opposition, which maybe they could then bring back to the rest of the team?
It's a good question. I think maybe, but I don't think it's as much sort of about that as it is that was just a really good experience for those guys. And they can bring stuff away that they learned for sure, I would imagine. But with that being said, I think it was 3 events that they were supposed to go to. One of them, that's sorry, for Ryu and Gizmy, who stood in for 3 months on the main Monte team. One of them was Chengdu, which they didn't go to. One of them was Pro League. and then one of them was the RMR. And I know for a fact that that decision was made so fast for them to go and play in the RMR that I don't think they would have even had much prac at all with the main team. If I had to guess, I don't know, but if I had to guess, I would imagine that was not a lot of prac. So you you have these tournaments where you don't do amazingly. If you don't get out of group, suddenly you're done after like a week, and it's maybe it's a taste into what it potentially could be if you keep working hard, and maybe it's that work ethic they can bring back with them. I don't know. It is the honest answer, but I wouldn't place too much credence on it. But I imagine you get a glimpse into what it looks like up top. You think, okay, I want a piece of that, and I know with sort of the mindset, I can speak for Gizmy in particular because I know what he's like as a person because I've spoken to him a few times, that he is incredibly hardworking, and I know that he'll put his head down and he'll just go.
So tell me a bit about Gizmy then, because like you said, you know him, you know who he is. Like, when did you first get to know him? What was that conversation like? I mean, give us that tea.
I don't know if it's like massive tea. It's not. I think there's a funny story with me and Gizmy actually. I don't think he'll mind me saying this, but the first time I sort of knew about him was kind of when I was sort of first casting and I was doing some UK lands. I did Epic Lan, and then at the time there was another land called Insomnia, which doesn't exist anymore, but he was competing at Insomnia and he was playing on a team called Echo, with sort of Artist and the Irish guys that you probably have heard of under Viperio. If you kind of dig a little bit deeper into the UK scene, he was playing over there, and I met his mum in an elevator, and she was like coming to support like Gizmy and like watching him on stage and stuff, which is really nice. He did go on to lose that grand final, best of five, brutal. They shouldn't have lost it. In fact, we have like a UK CS:GO like publishing. Shout out Daff and Grim and Renard and like all the people that write there, and have really like revived the UK CS journalism scene. But they did an interview with him, and he was like, "What was the actual quote? Hang on, I'm gonna find the actual quote. I've got it right here." He said, "It would be very embarrassing not to win," and then they didn't win.
Oh
But
no!
yeah, no, I know. Bless him. But he played on a team called Lucent in ESEA Main. He was IGLing over there back in like 2022. He then joined a team that people might be familiar with, but I would imagine then they're not going to be that familiar with, called One Pin. And it was also called Heaven and Hell at the time. And they competed in UKIC, which is like a grassroots league thing separate to the other lands we've got going on. And that's developed quite a lot as well in recent times. But he played over there, and that was with like Doc, Leaf. I'm not sure if Azuwu was on that team with him at the time, but Azuwu, who now plays for Endpoint, was playing on that roster under a certain point. I know Wolfie was there as well. They won ESEA Open like completely with that team. So if you win ESEA Open, you go straight into ESEA Advanced, if memory serves. So that's already a massive step up in competition, but it also shows the potential just sort of this team. And then he joins Echo with Artist. That's where the storyline of him going to Insomnia comes in, where he's playing with these guys. They won a LAN internationally in Austria, I think just before that event. I can't remember what the event was called, but I remember them going to Austria, winning an event, and then coming back here, going to do that. And then they lost the final. It didn't go well. So then he leaves Echo. He then has a period of time, I think, where he's not on a team for maybe like a couple of months, goes to Viperio, and then they make that run at the RMR, at the Blast Major, where we see Fnatic versus Viperio in the first round. Like that was awesome for UKCS. And obviously then we've got ITB that then go and make the playoffs of that major. You've got Volt in there as well from ITB, who says he's not British, but we claim him anyway, who now plays for Gamer Legion. So that was a really good, amazing Cinderella story on all accounts in so many levels for UKCS at the Blast Major. But Gizmy was part of that as well, and he was owning in the RMR. He played really well in the RMR for his first like massive LAN, like there internationally, playing against some of the best teams. And sure, they didn't make it through, but he put his name on the map, and then he ends up in Monte Gen, and all the other stuff we spoke about previously. But that is a really brief, quick history in Gizmy and what I know to a certain extent, with a lot of waffle on the side, but you can pick out the main bits if you watch it back, guys. Just watch it on like 2 times speed, it'll be fine.
No worries, we love your waffle. Let's switch gears here though. Why does UKCS, I mean, I'm trying to think of the way to word this correctly without upsetting my British brethren,
Don't throw me
if
under
that's
the
the
bus
right
here.
word. Why does British CS struggle though? Because you would think that like they would have far more players at the top level. Why do you think they don't?
I think it's what I will preface this by is saying it has got a lot better over the last year, year and a half, even 2 years, like way better. I think it doesn't help that we don't have as many lands as we did anymore. We don't have UK Premiership anymore as well. Like ESL was hosting that. We don't have that anymore. We don't have Insomnia anymore. The only thing we really have is UKIC, where the grand finals are on LAN, and then you've got Epic, which runs 3 times a year, but the summer one, you don't really count that as a main CS tournament because all the big boys will rock up February, October. So it's probably about awareness in the scene as well. I think it's a case of in the UK, just in general, we didn't like I didn't know anything about esports when I was growing up. Like you know, like you look at Denmark, for example, and they've got whole courses on it. Finally, we've got university courses that have esports now in only a select few universities. But when you're growing up, when you're a kid, you don't know about these things. And I think times are shifting now where we are becoming a lot more of like an internet sort of society. You get to know things a lot more, and there are potentially options, but Counter Strike never really gets publicized massively in the media, especially here in the UK. So I think it's a lack of awareness. I think it's attitudes and perception sometimes in teams that has now shifted in a more positive direction. I definitely think it's trended upwards. And we are starting to see more and more UK players come through, and I think we are definitely. Think about Thomas from ITB. Think about Smuya that is now on ITB. You think about Azuwu that is playing on Endpoint. You think about how long Endpoint have actually been around for the competitive space as well. And you've now got Gizmy and Monte. You've got Mezzi, for goodness sake. Like there are very good examples of UK pros, and now that there's a lot of success, I think that will help a lot through Mezzi and Vitality. Hopefully, that now gives inspiration to the others. And you see people that are playing on Endpoint. You see Gizmy that's doing well on Monte Gen. You think, oh, okay, like there is a way out. And yeah, I think it's tough in the UK scene sometimes. But I think now that there's hope in the UK scene, that will hopefully make us see a lot more players in the future.
It's so cool because a lot of what you're saying is very similar to the situation in South Africa. So I can relate quite a bit. Specifically, like we've seen a drop in lands. The media doesn't really cover Counter-Strike. There's another issue that we have from a like socioeconomic situation, but for the most part, I get that. So there's like a certain excitement when you see one of your own step up. Mistim getting into NIP, like I think it's a terrible move, and I don't think that the team's going to do well. But I'm still excited for him, because I knew where he started, so I kind of get it. So I'm feeling that. But now let's talk about Monte Gen. What is it that you love about this particular team, B-Dog?
I think it's Monte Gen excites me because you've got obviously the firepower. I'm not going to talk too much about the firepower because everyone goes on about the firepower, and there's been conversations with tier 1 and tier 2 guys basically saying firepower isn't that much different. It's all about how the game works and how you play your game. And I think Monte Gen have got a really good sort of hybrid into the aggression that they have, because I think they've tempered it down a lot, because they used to be insanely aggressive and it was more of a detriment rather than a benefit when I first started watching them about 7-8 months ago. Now they've developed and they are playing a lot more like a tier 1 team. And I like that because it shows high CS IQ in these players. And it isn't just copy and paste, because I think sometimes tier 2 teams will watch a demo, or people even in ESEA, all right, you scale it all the way back. People will watch a demo, they'll see what people do, and they go, okay. And you think, if I just copy and paste this into a certain situation, it will work. And it doesn't, because CS is all about context. It's all about what is going on over the map. It's all about putting the pieces together and figuring out a pure game plan. I think Monte Gen, this is why I was saying earlier about their coach really helping them. I think they've got a really good understanding of their fundamentals, and it's very similar to Sangao, and why I was hyped on Sangao when they headed into Pro League, where your fundamentals are at such a high level that you can then fall back on all these protocols that you practiced. And I think Monte Gen have got a really good blend of knowing when's the right time to go into the space, when's your right time for your players to lurk. And it all sounds so simple and it sounds like I'm repeating the same stuff, but it is because these guys have got a lot of experience under their belts. They've been playing it ridiculous amounts this year. In HRTV, in CCT, making the playoffs is a really big boost for them. Taking the scalps to some really big teams is good for them. But also just having this trust in each other where they know exactly what's going to happen and it's belief in the calling. And this is what I want to move on to now because it hasn't always been Shield that was calling. Shield was calling quite a lot, and now he's not doing that anymore. And I got permission from him, so it's okay for me to say it, but Gizmy is now IGL in Monte Gen, and he has been for about a month.
Oh wow. Okay. I love it when you just drop knowledge bombs right there, and like you said, you've got permission. So that's a change for him, obviously, and a change for the whole team. And you believe that that's been a vast improvement for, well, not a vast improvement, but an improvement for the team with that change.
Massively, I think so, because it frees up Shield to be more of what Shield does, which is just a really supportive AWPer, sets up the team. I think it gives it gives more responsibility for Gizmy, but Gizmy already discussed he's hardworking. I want to actually come back to that just for a second and add more context on, because whilst I'm talking about him making these RMR runs with Viperio, I'm talking about him playing for Monte Gen. The entire time he's been doing this, he's also been at university. He's also been at college. So like he's doing all of this just on the side and making it work. So the fact that he can get to this level and he still was doing university and he still is, to my knowledge, studying at uni, like it's a massive testament to him. So I think because he's taken on that responsibility, he used to IGL back in the day. He also has played under two of the best, or two of the best, in my opinion, in-game leaders in the UK as well. That being Docs, who was very slow and methodical. You can see that in Monte Gen. And then you've also got Artist, who's a little bit more loose. He likes to go for wild stuff. Like I remember when Verdant, Echo, and like UMX at the time they were called. And even Coalesce, all the org names that this like core of players has been under, they were wild, they were wacky, especially like on Vertigo. I remember like they modeled their playstyle quite a lot of Furia of old, and so you've got those two styles that Gizmy's played under, and then he can find the perfect balance of what he thinks works, what he thinks doesn't work, what will fit to his team, and he's got a lot of experience considering how young he is. So I think it's a good fit. I think that he's quite he's told me he's quite a loud voice in the team anyway, so it kind of just makes a lot of sense for him just to kind of slot into this role. And it might be a little bit of extra pressure, but he doesn't mind it.
So now, where do you see Gizmy in, let's say, a year's time? I think a year is a fair assessment with how much we have going on next year on the calendar. I mean, where do you think this player will find himself?
To be honest, I think Monte Gen is more of a long-term project based on the players that they've got. So I'd actually still expect to see him in Monte Gen. If they start winning a lot of things in the next year, then I would expect him to be picked up and given an opportunity in a better tier 2, tier 1.5 team maybe. But in a year's time, I do expect him to still be on this academy project, because it takes a while for these academy projects to kind of spring into life. And then the most important thing about them is being consistent. The most important thing about tier 2 and tier 3 Counter-Strike is being consistent. That's amazing that you've made a playoffs, and they then backed up and did it again by going 3-0 in the group stage. But they're still being currently asked to go through the closed qualifiers and then go through the Swiss stage, which means they got to still earn their flowers, even though they've done it in the past. So it's about repeated success for this team, and that's just in the CCT circuit. And then it's about building on how many different tournaments can you enter, how much pressure is that for all of you, and then can you keep performing to a high level. So at the moment, they've shown that they can do it. It's all about maintaining it, which is why I think the project will stay together for at least another 6, maybe even 9 months, to be honest. We'll see how the Monte Gen project goes, but it's really important to develop that consistency, especially while you guys got an average age of 20, right? So it's important to just get the habits in good whilst you're young. But yeah, I expect him to still be on Monte Gen. If not, I would say Monte again, but they're Polish right now, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other conversation I'd love to have about the Polish twist up, but not here. What I do want to do now is, now anyone watching, I'm sure that you're going to say UK bias caster, but I don't think that's the case. I do think B Dog does try and look at this with pretty central eyes when he does this. But you know how it goes, B Dog. Sell me this pro. Why am I taking a little bit of a gamble on Gizmy?
I think you just want to, with this sort of investment, it's not one of those where you go all in. It's one of those where he's kind of like a sleeper stock, where I think he'll do quite well in a few years, but we're just getting in early. I just wanted to kind of put his name out there so he's on some people's radars, and it also gives attention to Monte Gen, because I think Monte Gen deserve a lot of credit from what they've gone for over the last few months to sort of where they're at now. And Gizmy, he's gone through all of the domestic stages of competition in the UK Counter-Strike scene. He's already appeared at a couple of RMRs. One of them was with Viperio, one of them was with Monte, where he was standing in, and he didn't really kind of get a fair crack of the whip at it. He now gets a second chance coming back into the academy team. He's taken on a new responsibility as an in-game leader role, and he's got a lot of experience for only being 20 years old. They've made playoffs of CCT not once but twice. They're looking to do it again. They're looking to churn up and grind their way and earn their spot at the table in Tier 2 Counter-Strike. I think he's incredibly knowledgeable. I know he's incredibly hardworking, and I think he's got a lot of talent to give. And the fact that his rating hasn't dropped off since adding more responsibility on call-in, where he's now probably taken a lot more time to look at the mini map and also think about what's going to be the next move for his team. That's a testament not only to how comfortable he feels in the team, but a confidence and complete praise to the player himself. So Gizmy is one to watch, one to keep your eyes on, and that's why you should, if you want to go for a little bit, sink a little bit of pennies in there for him.
A little bit of pennies towards Gizmy. I just love how passionate you are. I was a bit of a hard ass at the start of this because I was like, I'm going to play that devil's advocate, get B-Dog used to the Reddit hate. But you defended it so well, and I loved how you came in there and you've changed my mind a little bit. I need to be less cynical sometimes, I think. And you've convinced me I'm definitely going to be watching him now.
I'm glad if people can just watch some Monte Gen, because it isn't just Gizmy, right? And he's one player that we can highlight. But for Monte Gen, look at FNL. Look at the way that Shield plays. If you want to know how to AWP in a really defensive, supportive style, you watch Shield, because I think he's brilliant at what he does. I think FNL's got the potential to be an incredibly prominent player, and we know the capabilities that Ryu has got from his time in Monte Gen. It isn't just sort of one player; it's also just the sum of the parts for Monte Gen, and that's not even talking about Lean, and Lean's improvement has been the best out of any of them in the last month. So there's a lot to be excited about for Monte Gen. So you take anything away from this episode is that it's UKCS has got some good players, guys, and make sure to go and watch Monte Gen because I like them a lot.
There we go. B-Dog did it all. He said it all. We will see you for the next episode, and let us know if you watched Monte Gen what you thought. Let us know if there's any UK CS players we should be focusing on, or if there's any players around the world that you'd want us to speak about, and we'll see you for the next episode.